Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the latest edition of the Woke Bros. Of course, I'm your co-host, Big Wos, aka Wos and Nando Vila, and I'm joined by a very special man, near and dear to my heart, on the west side of Los Angeles. What's up, Nando? What's popping?
You're my most special man, dude. That's you know that. You know that, baby.
Thank you. Warms the soul. It truly does. On today's show, man, we wanted to get into some like really relevant topics. Gotta cover January 6th. No, I'm just kidding. Um, no,
You
we're
weren't
do
glued to the hearings. You weren't glued to the hearings.
no, I haven't watched a
Okay,
second of
here's
that
here's
crap.
here's the analysis. Here's the analysis you need on all of that shit. No one important and with power is gonna go to jail over anything. So
So
therefore,
what's
it's
the
all
point?
useless.
Yeah, like
Yeah,
who cares?
yeah. So that's it. That's the analysis.
But we do want to get to just the inflation, the price hikes in places like gas and air travel and different sectors of the economy and what it all means. But first, we wanted to get into something that Nando sees as part of a whole piece in all of this stuff, and that was the crash of the crypto markets. Just last week basically everything has been down in every part of crypto because I own some Bitcoin. So I saw through via Cash App. Cash App always reminds you when Bitcoin is up, Bitcoin is down.
Yeah.
They're always telling you. And I saw it was at like $26,000 per Bitcoin, to which a lot of people were like, oh my God, that's crazy, which I don't really think is that big of a deal. Not for the people who actually got rich off of it. And we'll get into what I mean by that later. And all of them, Ethereum, you name it, all of this stuff was down. And a lot of people are wondering what it all means. And what's hilarious to me, Nando, about crypto, and how it relates to the greater sort of market and all of that stuff is like when you see gas go up and down, like it's shit that we use. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, so the
Moves your
effect,
car. You gets you
yes,
from A to B.
it warms people's homes. Like,
Yeah.
it's like it's flying airplanes, like it's doing all of this stuff, right? And so, like, you see how it can have all these effects all around the economy. Like, you notice it because it's this tangible thing that we actually use. Like when I see crypto crashes like that aren't tethered to, some of it I think is tethered to the price of the interest rates going up in the loan market and all of these other financial sort of environmental conditions. But like a part of me is just like, what is this shit based on? Actually, that's a lie. Very early on in the pandemic, when the Fed was infusing the economy with way more cash and money, and I'm not talking about our checks. They were doing it
No.
all over the place, guys. Like our checks were just a tiny fraction of that. Like it kind of made sense, right? It's like Bitcoin is this, something that is made scarce and there's only so much of it. And when the Fed is sort of flooding the zone, you kind of get why this theoretical currency that's fixed to affixed to a certain number of Bitcoin being out there. You're like, oh, okay, this is scarce, and they're making the dollar less scarce, so then this becomes more value. Like you can kind of follow all of that shit. The whole crypto economy just crashing one day, like it's hard to make sense of all of that, Nando. So I'm very interested to know how you're seeing this whole sort of dance play out.
Well, the crypto phenomenon that really crypto's been around for what, like 10 years kind of thing, but really it's been the last 2 years where it's really become this really hot issue, right? That everyone kind of was talking about at one point. A lot of people were getting really rich. And I think a lot of it is what you were talking about, is that in the wake of the pandemic, the government responses, especially in the United States, was this massive quantitative easing of cash into capital markets. Like the Fed was like literally pumping cash into financial markets, and it was very easy for people with money to get even more money, right, for investments and things like that. And the problem is, partly because of the pandemic, but partly because capitalism has entered into a state of kind of stagnation, is that there are no real productive places to put that cash. Like, there's no like sector of the economy that like you can invest your money in.
Dude, we couldn't even get an infrastructure bill through. Like, we couldn't even be like, yo, why don't we like remake the country? Like, make it, like, build some doper bridges and roads and rails and this, and like, we couldn't even like literally like something tangible that people would go to work on, that would make the quality of life better for average people. Like, we couldn't even do that. We couldn't invest in that. Like, there's nothing tangible for these ultra rich people to put their money to. So it's like, yo, why don't I put my money into JPEGs?
Yeah. Like, we're going to create this new thing that, it's like what the metaverse is, like capitalism won. Like, there are no more lands for capitalism to conquer. And when that happens, when there are no new markets for capitalism to conquer, I mean, I think it's hard for us to understand that because it's the relatively recent phenomenon, right? Like, China was kind of like the last big holdout, and capitalism like got in there. It's basically post 1999, so there are no new markets to conquer. And for a while, that was the growth area. China was the growth. That's where American capital could find growth, was in China. Like in the 2000s and stuff like that, people were putting their money in China because China could grow. Now that's done. It's gotten
it's
there.
Over. It's grown. It's a grown man now. It's off to college.
It doesn't need your breast milk anymore.
Yeah, China's now a stripper.
Yeah, exactly. And so there are no new markets to conquer. And what happens is that the overall rate of profit falls when that happens, because competition, like if there's a profitable company here, a bunch of new ones are going to be like, oh, we want to know that. And they come in and they compete and whittles profit down. That's what always has created crises of capitalism over time. Capitalism has always reinvented itself through these major crises, like 2 world wars, the Great Depression, the Great Crisis of the 1970s, the financial crisis. Like, there's always like a big collapse that then it kind of restarts the system. But the problem is, back then, there were these new markets to flow into also. Now we don't have that anymore. So where does the money go? They have to create these new things. And that's why they're creating this fucking metaverse bullshit. They're creating crypto. They're creating the JPEGs. And it's like, oh, look, it's this new thing, but it's fake. Like, it's fake. It's fucking fake. It's fucking fake.
I got into this conversation with a homie of mine, and I realized that the person had invested in NFTs just as, to diversify their portfolio, right? But I was just talking, just generally speaking, I was just like, yes, there's fake Picassos out there, but a guy has to sit down and make a fake Picasso. Like the manpower, the brain power that it takes to make a fake Picasso. You can't tell me that's the same shit as me right-clicking on your JPEG.
Yeah, it's a little bit more inelastic.
It's not the fucking same. I'm sorry. And I know I sound like a fucking kook when I say this. I'm just like, bro, like, you're fucking ugly ape. I can just right-click, and then you be like, oh, well, you don't have the original bill of sale. So I still have it. The exact same thing, and I could put it on my profile. And you could do what? You could try to advertise like, well, I have the original. What are you
Did you see what happened to Seth Green? Did you see what happened to Seth Green, the actor?
They stole his damn NFT, and he can't sell his TV show no more.
In case I didn't follow the story, I'll explain it. Seth Green, the actor, Dr. Evil's son in the Austin Powers series. If you don't know who Seth Green, the actor is.
He's a legend.
he bought a board ape or a couple board apes or whatever. They're like $500,000, these things, right?
Insane.
And
Insane.
he developed a TV show based off of the IP of the ape that he owned. He created like an animated show, and he was going to shop it around and try to sell it and whatever. And he did all this work to create, like, I think he wrote like a script and whatever about like the ape running around his little ape world. And then someone stole his ape, the NFT. And now he legally doesn't own the IP for the show he created, so he can't sell it no more.
By the way, that like
it's one of the funniest things that's ever happened.
Like this idea that I now can't make a show because the proof that I own this JPEG has been stolen from me. This is the height of insanity, and it's just like I feel like society and internet digital culture and just a lack of an investment in people from our institutions. Like people get driven to this digital shit and they just really just like, well, the real world is ass, and maybe I'll find greener pastures here in the fake world.
Yeah.
And the thing is, like, guys,
and like Seth Green, your career's not coming back because you got the Bored Ape show.
100%. And my thing is, like, you can't get a blowjob in the digital world, guys.
No, you can't.
Like
You
can't have human, physical, like real interactions in these worlds. Like that's why I'm just like, man, people just don't respect. I don't know what to call it. Like the idea that you could say, well, people make fake Picassos. I'm like, bruh, you know how like hard that is?
You have to like go to art school, like learn how to be an incredible painter.
Like where you can. They just dismissed it. Like the response was, well, they make fake Picassos too. The fakes in the art world, that's the thing. I'm like, bro, you know what it takes to do that and get away with that? I can just right click your JPEG. like how do
1,000 times in like 4 seconds,
Bro, it can be reproduced 1 trillion times in no time. Yet you're telling me this is somehow valuable because you quote unquote own it in the digital space. I hate sounding like a Luddite.
Even a baseball card is like hard to reproduce, because it's like the closest thing, right? It's like a baseball card, you know what I mean? Right. Kind of thing. And like, yeah, baseball cards are stupid and they're useless in some real way. Like, your baseball card doesn't do anything or whatever. Some of them have a lot of value, and that's kind of crazy. But even the replicability of the baseball card, which I'm sure you can go to a print shop and like figure out a way to like get the same cardboard or whatever, it's hard. Doable. You don't have to go to art school so that you can recreate a Picasso by hand or whatever, or God forbid, like a Da Vinci or whatever. But like even that process is like, it's hard.
When they fake age it and they do like, bro, like you can't even compare the manpower that goes into it. Right. And I'm just like, yo, this is wild. And then again, I will say this again for the 10 trillionth time. I went to a Bitcoin conference in 2015. It sounded amazing. And what they basically said was like, this is a form of currency. What sets this apart from the currency we have now is you can do this in secrecy. You can do a digital transaction for goods with this as the backing, and nobody will know who got the money, who sent the money. That is never been done before. It has a functional use. Of course, all of the uses are nefarious: tax dodging, buying ecstasy and cocaine on the internet, on the dark web, whatever. But you can say whatever you want about the intentions. That's a function, Nando. Like, oh shit, I can move money around in secret. The FBI has the back door to Bitcoin, y'all. You can no longer do Bitcoin in secret. That's over. So it basically no longer has its functionality. maybe if you guys can tell me that, the blockchain, if y'all tell me y'all gonna come up with another way to make the blockchain fire, cool. All the shit that y'all have come up with so far are fucking worthless now.
Yeah,
And
well, I talk to a lot of people. I mean, I get in these arguments all the time. I mean, I've always been kind of a skeptic, just naturally, like
I
for
was
this kind of shit.
skeptical. I was skeptical of Bitcoin because I'm like, how is Uncle Sam gonna stand for this? This
Well,
is
of
the
course,
type of
that
shit.
was always my point. That was always my point. I was like, guys,
We've gone to war
you
for
can have
less
your
than
fun.
this.
Yeah, you can have your fun, but like, do you know what the
This
U.S. government is? Like,
this challenges the entire notion of the
yeah,
American state. That
yeah.
like literally,
But
like,
when
because
they'll
that
say,
was my
yeah,
thing.
we're gonna bring it down, and I'm like,
Oh
okay.
my god! Oh my god! That's ridiculous. That's absurd.
We're like, yes, a stateless world, like, blah 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 blah. Like,
Also, like,
I'm
ain't
like,
that
are
shit
you
just a
stupid?
computer
Like,
program? Like, couldn't some fucking hackers or somebody figure this shit? They figured it out. By the way, this whole story about this one Chinese guy who did it and didn't want the glory,
Satoshi Nakamoto.
that
Yeah,
shit was bullshit, man. That shit was bullshit. But again, my thing was like, I was like, man, this shit sounds dope. They had great drinks at the conference or whatever. But in my head, I was
yeah.
like, man, like, I'm paying attention to everything you guys have said, but this literally stands against everything the American government stands for, which is you have to pay me. All money basically belongs to me. All of it.
Yeah.
You have to pay me. This idea that you could skirt paying me, that's how the whole system breaks down if that's the case. So I'm just like, I don't see how Uncle Sam is going to stand for that. Then it was, son, I remember it was like the smallest headline somewhere. And it was like, yeah. And I was reading the shit and it might have been about Bitcoin or whatever. And it was like, yeah, the Fed's got the back door now. I was like, all right, so then this shit is pointless.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you were saying, Nando.
No, but it's like, I mean, yeah, I mean, so, I mean, aside of like just how, I mean, in my opinion, like just like how obviously stupid it all is, like it doesn't make, what ends up happening if you push them a little bit, it always just ends up doubling down to like some ridiculous kind of revolutionary.
Pie in the sky. Yeah. Uh-huh.
Yeah, it's like, when you're trying, like, no, like, okay, in the real world, in today, how is this shit supposed to work? And then they're like, oh, but like, and then you're like, no, and then you push them on a little bit, and the whole thing just kind of basically comes down to faith. It's like, I believe it's like a religious thing. That's why they're so fervent about it, like, because it has essentially become a sort of faith, right? But to me, it was so obvious what's going on, and it's maybe because of like my ideological training under Comrade Marx, but when there are no productive investments for the money to go, and they're just and the system is just shoveling trillions of dollars of easy money. Like, why do you think you saw like these like insane VC funds like just investing in all these crazy companies, that don't make any fucking sense? Because the money was easy to come by. It's the interest rates were zero, which means that borrowing money is like fucking free. You know what I mean? The Fed is like, encouraging this. The federal government is encouraging this in the wake of the CARES Act and, in the COVID relief bill, which they did it through these like kind of cheap money mechanisms. And there's just money sloshing around everywhere. And it's like, okay, this is very obviously just like, if there's easy money, we got to put it somewhere. Let's do this, play with our little fucking computer games. But when and here's my point, coming back to the gas prices thing, the system is turning the money machine off. I don't know if you saw today that the Federal Reserve announced that it was hiking interest rates up by 0.75 of a percentage point. It doesn't matter. The point is that they're hiking interest rates.
The party's over.
The party's fucking over. And what's when you got to tighten the shit? What's the first thing that's gonna go? The fucking computer games and the JPEGs, of course.
And again, like I think people like to sneer at the crypto bros on the internet, and I don't really have an interest in doing that because I think like a lot of normal people thought this was a legitimate way for them to build wealth. I can remember at the point in I think it was still 2020 when that shit hit 60,000. And I was like, God damn, this is kind of fucking insane, right?
Yeah.
And by the way, I know somebody who got in when it was like $1,000 or something like that, or or hundreds of dollars or something like that, and has made hundreds of millions of dollars off of this shit. So there are people who were able to strike gold and hit the lottery on it, and and God bless them. You know what I mean? But like the average person, man, you was never gonna turn into no fucking tech billion, some crypto billionaire overnight from doing nothing else but just purchasing Bitcoin. Like again, like nobody's using it for anything. There is no use. We already have a way to transfer funds. It's slower. It is slow, which I don't necessarily think
It's
is a
not even
bad thing.
no. But was I like dabbled in I like don't have any Bitcoin or whatever, but I dabbled in for reasons that are not important like a few months ago in a couple transactions here and there. And it's if first of all, it's so much more expensive. These fucking gas taxes or whatever they do, like what do they call them? Like when you do a transaction on anything, they charge these gas taxes, which are fucking exorbitant. Like and unpredictable. Like each time, like it's different. You know what I mean? You can't predict it, which is fucking bananas. Like no system can work like that. You know what I mean? That like the gas price changes like from
because of all the energy
that
that it takes to mine Bitcoin.
Yeah, or to pay the fucking middleman in the thing. So first of all, like it takes and then second of all, like it's so much more rinky dink. It's so easy to steal. It's so easy to like hack this shit. It's supposed to be this like impenetrable thing. Like, it's supposed to be like dead safe. Like that's what they bill it as, like this kind of completely transparent and dead safe thing. Like, bro, you got your money in your bank account. Like, no one's stealing that shit. It's impossible. Why? Because even if someone did steal it, like if someone fucking robbed your bank and stole every fucking cash dollar they had, the federal government insures it, and you fucking but Seth Green's fucking apes are not. It's a fucking guy could just steal it. Okay, so and then the actual thing, like when you sign up for a Coinbase thing, dude, it takes like 2 weeks to process like some of this. It's only faster once you've already become like a very like very into it. But like if you're just kind of dabbling in it, it's incredibly onerous. And then it's so much more rinky-dink, so much more unregulated and able to be destroyed and hacked and swindled and whatever and what have you. And then finally, like these transaction taxes on these fucking Bitcoin, on any of these crypto transactions are fucking exorbitant and unpredictable. Like the fucking shit makes no sense. So I mean, I don't know. Like, and the thing with the blockchain, which like is something that probably will exist and it has some kind of useful function. They bill it though as this kind of like revolutionary thing that's going to change the way the thing works. And I'm like, oh, it's just like a way to like, make a contract like more like we have contracts. Like, I don't know, like what's the,
it's digitizing the
contract. A digital contract, like cool. Like it, like what problem are you solving for? Like contracts are like, what are they like getting like?
And again, like I said, when they came up with the sort of troll coins like the Dogecoin and the this, and Elon Musk basically jerked you guys.
When everyone ran to the hills.
Jerked you guys with the Dogecoin, and he pump and dumped you to death, then dropped you like a bad habit. It was just like, all right, like guys, like I mean, at least the Bitcoin people are telling you like there's a functionality to the Bitcoin. Like, what the fuck is Dogecoin, bro? What is anybody supposed to do with that? And a lot of people's like, whatever, you can get in and get out and this and that. And it was just like this craze. It was this craze, man.
It was a mania. I mean, it was very obviously a mania, right?
Yeah, like the Robin Hood shit, the AMC shit, the GameStop shit. It was just a crazy moment where people thought this was their California gold rush, and everybody just ran on in and they just got their heads beaten in by some Black Hawk Indians, man. I swear to God. Like, it's crazy.
but yeah, but like I said, the Federal Reserve is turning off the money machine.
Yep.
They're raising interest rates. I mean, honestly, frankly, I mean, they're doing it in the name of fighting inflation. And like, I mean, inflation is a very real phenomenon
Mhm.
that's happening right now. I mean, if anyone's gotten gas lately, it's fucking crazy. But the problem is, the way that the government is deciding to fight inflation is the same way they did it in the 1970s, which is basically by inducing a recession and making everyone poorer. And what the problem with that is that it misunderstands the nature of this inflation and why it exists. Right? If you talk to rich people, they always say like, "Oh, look at this inflation." It's because like we gave all those fucking poor people like the unemployment benefits and
It's
the
so
fucking $2,000
ridiculous.
checks, and the labor market got aggressive. Like we've talked about it. Like workers leaving their job, workers demanding more wages, workers like being more militant. That usually happens in that kind of environment. When they get a little money in their pocket, they get more self-confident. The
Also,
risk.
there's no proof that wages have actually gone up that significantly. It's not.
No, yeah, there's definitely like an uptick in worker militancy, and there has been an increase in wages. The problem is with the inflation. But the thing is, the other aspect, and I would argue the main aspect driving inflation is this little thing called the fucking pandemic, and this other little thing called the war in Russia and Ukraine. Like
Yeah.
the supply chains are fucked.
Yeah.
Like, and when you can't, like when China is shutting down entirely when like two people get fucking COVID, and they put like, a city of 25 million people that happens to like manufacture a huge chunk of the world's, whatever these things, like whatever, like shit that gets made over there. And the supply chains ground to a halt, then prices go up, obviously.
Yes.
And when there's a war
It's,
in Russia,
and
sorry.
people, and to make people understand, right? Like if I have two things, if I have these four trinkets that I usually sell at $2 a pop, but now the supply chain has been messed up so much that I only have one, I'm gonna sell that one for 8 or at least 6. Right? Like it's more scarce. And so therefore, like, yo, I still got bills to pay. I'm gonna sell it for more because the demand is still there. Like it's really not that complicated, bro.
Yeah.
Like they're not producing as much goods because of the pandemic, because of the war, and so supplies are low. Like it's obvious. Instead of being like, yo, how do we invest in a way to get the supply chain moving again? It's like, oh, like
Or
it's
to
a fish.
manufacture shit here.
God forbid, God forbid,
Yeah.
we paid people livable wages to make shit here. You
But
know,
so like the war in Ukraine, like the war in Russia and like the economic sanctions on Russia, Russia's a huge country and, has a ton of raw materials that like it exports to the world, like a ton of like random ass minerals that appear in like, your Bernie Sanders mug and shit, or your microphone, or like a ton of that shit gets mined out of Russia and then exported to the rest of the world. Oil, like Russia's one of the biggest exporters of oil in the world. If you're talking about gas prices, like the fact that Russia is now cut off from the U.S. market of oil, like is going to drive prices up. So like again, it's misunderstanding the nature of the inflation. Like it's not that workers are getting too uppity and making too
come
much
on,
money.
man.
Is
It's
that the
not because
supply
workers
chains are
got $3,000. Shut
yeah.
up.
So yeah, I mean it's just a very bleak thing. I mean the one bright spot is seeing the crypto crash because that's fun, but the recession that's coming, that is being basically induced by the government on purpose, and this is like where, like if I were Brandon, I'd be like, bro, like I'd be firing the Fed chair like right now. like what the fuck are you doing, bro? Like Brandon's approval rating is below 40% for the first time, and if you look at his approval or disapproval, it was like, approve here and disapprove here. And as the year has gone on, and then like the supply chain and like inflation thing got crazy, it went like this, like it just completely flipped. And he's fucked. He's toast, like especially for this election, because the economy is going to be in the tank, because the Federal Reserve is going to basically induce a recession. And it's sad. It's sad that they just keep doing the same game plan rather than doing the correct game plan, which is to strengthen supply chains, like invest the public money to put people to work, to make people do productive things that are needed, you know, like fixing fucking roads and creating new fucking dams or solar energy farms or whatever. They don't do that. They just like, no, we're going to turn off the money spigot and you guys are fucked.
Yeah, it's so stupid. And like again, like you see stuff with the car markets, and it's like it's like these small little things that they're missing from cars that they just can't get. And it's like, damn, we can't just turn around and
dude,
start making that shit.
have you looked at the car market recently, like the used car market? So, like, you know, we talked about a little bit about the election in California, and one of the things people point to is like the carjackings are like way up in like LA
In
and San
Northern,
Francisco and whatever.
okay.
Dude, have you seen the used car market right now? Like, this is just a market mechanism. Like, look at like a fucking what it costs to buy like a 2018 Honda Accord, you know, with like 50,000 miles. Like, you'll be like, what? You know, it's because the supply, like there's a limited supply of cars. Like they're not making more cars because they can't get the raw materials to the factories to make the fucking cars. So obviously, you know, criminals are seeing that. They're seeing like, holy shit, I can go on eBay and sell a car for an absurd price these days. You know, like I'm gonna fucking jack this car. You know, like, of course. Yeah, like what people don't realize, like it's just. You got to look at the macroeconomic trends to understand the forces in society and how they're behaving. You know, you got to look at the fundamentals of how the economy works to understand why crypto's crashing, why carjackings are up, and why gas prices are at $7 a gallon.
Well, folks, that's our show for today. Make sure you are locked into every single Count the Dings property. Make sure you become a patron. It's less than a cup of coffee a month to support the great content that we do for you guys on a weekly, daily basis. We'll see you guys next week. Peace.
Later.